Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast about two older geeks revisiting their young selves in days of yore, when all things geeky were not part of the mainstream, and we were discovering all the geeky things that we know and love. Star Trek, Star Wars, science fiction, fantasy, monster movies, you name it, we talk about it. And today we're going to talk about 1984's movie adaptation of Dune. I'm Tom Grant, and I will kill him with kindness.
And I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor, and I say, cry havoc and let loose the pugs of war.
All right. All right. Well, before we get into David Lynch's Dune, which I think has to be always prefaced as David Lynch's
I think so, yes,
Dune.
yes. Or Dilo De Laurentiis' Dune, really. But
Right. Because it's kind of a way of saying, you did this, young man.
Yes.
All right. What geeky things have you been doing?
So mostly I've been Dune-A-Paloozing it up in preparation for all this Dune talk. I also did start into that stack of, I got some Doctor Who comics that you noted, a humble bundle, which is hard to say, of Doctor Who comics. And I started reading some of those, but I have no commentary at this time.
Yeah, I've been playing a couple of sessions of an RPG with some friends that I have wanted to play for a long time, because this is one of the first RPGs out there in the world. And I'm not going to give any details right now because there's a lot to talk about, and I'm going to probably write a Substack post about it. But that's been one of my geeky landmarks of the last week or so.
Excellent.
All right. What soundtrack would you pick for this episode if we were so flush with wealth that we could afford to license it?
I would use Queen's Flash Gordon theme, because every time the lightning of the sandworms came on screen, that's what I thought of.
You wanted those sandworms to say, "Ah."
Yeah. Sandworms, savior of the galaxy. I don't know. It's terrible.
Right. So I chose David Bowie's Starman. I mean,
Sure.
a good sort of science fiction, related song, glam rock, also something to, I don't know, get back to the normal world after watching this movie. Just as however much David Bowie represents the normal world.
I was going to say that's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my normal world. What's more normal for me might not be normal for you. So you had never seen this movie before?
No, I had not. I was aware of it. I'd seen some clips of it, but I was burned in my brain is an animated GIF of Sting emerging from the steam,
Yes.
looking all oily and whatever.
Right.
Very, very stingy. I don't know that I've known and I've seen the clips, but I had never sat down and watched this film until now.
Okay. Well, since you had never seen this before, and we were going to be doing the Dune series, and I insisted that we watch this movie. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, so warning.
Yeah.
We didn't like this movie.
No, we did not.
And so we're going to explore all the ways in which we didn't like it.
But we're looking forward to talking about it.
Yes, we're looking forward to talking about it. This will be therapeutic for us.
Yes.
But if you are a fan of this movie, we genuinely would love to hear what you liked about that movie. In fact, That's one of the questions we're gonna have later, is kind of surmising what it is some fans of this movie see in it that we don't. So you encountered this movie first when you watched it recently. I encountered it when it came out, and I was, of course, excited.
Sure.
Loved the book. Was almost shocked into disbelief that there was going to be a film adaptation. It did seem at the time to be a little questionable that somebody could pack that novel into a movie, however long.
Right.
At least, what you'd see normally at the movie theater. And both my wife at the time and I were fans of the book, had read the initial book, and at least the next two books in the series, maybe the next three. We both hated it, and I have not watched it since 1984 when it was in theaters. And one of the things that really disturbed me about it was I knew it was going to be a long time before Dune was adapted again.
Right.
And so it was not just disappointment with the movie, but it was also disappointment with the future of sharing my love for Dune with a wider audience, which is what movie adaptations give you the opportunity to do. And then you can go to parties and you can say, aha, you thought I was a crazy-eyed lunatic when I was talking about Dune before, but now you know how incredible it is.
Or you know how crazy I am because did you see the movie?
What?
And that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
In 1984, if you said that
Oh,
to someone
right,
at a
right.
party, they would
Yes.
go, "Yeah, you're crazy,"
Right.
and the movie proves it.
And the movie proves it. Okay. All right. So I have so many questions. We have
Oh yes.
so many questions to cover. My first question is, okay, last time you picked up some Dune Arcana
Hmm.
about how Frank Herbert had taken psychedelics during
Right.
the writing of Dune. I think an unanswerable question is how many psychedelics were ingested in the production of this movie?
So many, so many.
So many. Did you have an alcoholic beverage
No, I should have, but I
when
did
you were
not.
watching the movie?
I did not.
I did.
I was stone cold sober for the entire event.
Why did you do that?
I just didn't think about it. I think I watched it like after lunch after we recorded last time, and which wasn't the time to crack out the whiskey. But maybe it should have
Yes.
been. My wife had come home from work and I've been sloshed. I don't think that would have been good.
Yeah. So I normally don't like it when people share their alcohol experiences as podcasters, but I do want to say I had my favorite beer of late. Not my all-time favorite beer, but kind of my standard, which is Great Divide White Russian, which is
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So anyway, I'll just I'm not getting paid by the Great Divide Company. I just want to say that's a good beer. There's also a big Lebowski tie-in in with that beer.
I thought maybe so. So I will say
Yes.
that if they want to send us samples, I'd be more than happy to comment at a later date, should they
Right.
be willing to do so.
Because we need to fund our vast media empire somehow.
The vast media empire, indeed.
Okay.
Anyway,
So we're going to talk about the movie as a movie, and
yes,
we're also going to talk about the movie as an adaptation of the source
yes.
material. Let's start with just talking about it as a movie. What grade would you give this movie as a movie?
That's a great question. I didn't think about I mean, a D, maybe? I'd give it a D. I might throw in I might bump it to a C once you take into consideration the monumental task it was trying to undertake in adapting this novel.
Hmm.
But there's very little about this movie that I was especially impressed with. What grade would you give it? I'm not going to explain why. We can go through the details in a minute. But
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what would I give an F? I think like highly experimental movies, so experimental to the point of unwatchability, that would be an F. So I'd
mhm.
probably give it a D, maybe
I mean,
D
it's not.
minus.
Yeah, I mean it's not a failure in the sense that there is a coherent narrative that runs throughout the entire 2+ hours of running time. I know what's going on. There are elements of it that are interesting, and I do have to remember that it was made in 1984 and not 2025. And so some of the model work and some of the practical effects, I have to remember what that was like in the mid
Hmm.
80s. There are some good actors in this movie. I'm not going to say there's a whole lot of good acting in this movie.
Right.
I blame a lot of that on the director. We'll get to that in a minute. And I do know the movie there was, as is often the case in these films, studio interference. It wasn't all Lynch's fault, and that's why I sort of made the passing joke about it being Dino De Laurentiis' fault as well, and
Hmm.
whoever else was involved. But
Right.
it's not a very good movie, in my opinion.
No. And we'll go kind of bit by bit of the different aspects of the movie. You can see how disappointed I must have been when this came out.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, and
sure.
sitting in
Oh
the
sure.
theater, also without an alcoholic beverage to help
Yeah, back in the
lubricate the
day,
experience.
they didn't serve alcohol in
There
movies
wasn't
back in the
Alamo
80s.
Draft House
Nope,
back
nope,
then.
nope.
Nope, 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 nope. That was inconceivable. You would sneak it in. maybe. I never did that, but
Right.
that would be the only route to.
Yeah, a hip flask,
Right. Yes.
like Doc Holliday.
Your own private Alamo draft
That's
house.
right. That's right.
All right. I kind of don't want to lead off with the directing because I think since we're talking about the acting already, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's an entry point into the directing. So, is there a particular adjective you would apply to the acting in this movie?
Melodramatic.
Yes, I think that's a good one.
It's this.
Melodramatic yet strangely flat at the same time.
That's true. I mean, this is why, and I blame. Again, I just said not to talk about the directing, but I'm going to violate the rule immediately.
Stop.
I think that all I can guess, right, is
Yes,
that they were told to act this way. That's why
right.
I think it's directing. There's no way that many different actors, some of which have pretty good resumes, some of which were I think relatively unknown at the time, would why would I'll pick on one, and why would Brad Dourif act the way he acted as Piter if he hadn't been told to behave that way?
Well, especially since we've seen him in plenty of other
He's a,
movies
I mean,
being great.
he's a great actor,
Yeah.
and holy cow! I mean, but it was just remarkable to me the way the lines are delivered has a certain consistency to it that had to have been derived from David Lynch, and so it just the acting it was melodramatic is the word. Do you have a word beyond that?
Well, I think flat.
Flat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It just artificial, I think is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I started to watch the recent movies.
Yes.
I just started actually watching them this morning, and I put them aside deliberately because I wanted to retain the feeling that I got from the David Lynch version of just how odd the acting is. And so I started to watch, the
Mm-hmm.
movie, and there's Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, Timothy Chalamet. Anyway, and they're all acting more naturally.
Yes.
Oscar
Yes.
Isaac has a good scene,
Mm-hmm.
with Paul, and there was nothing like that in this movie,
No, not to get into
with
that.
maybe a couple of odd exceptions. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I've already dived down that rabbit hole. I've watched the entire first part. Watched all of part one, and I've watched the first hour of part two. And yes, I mean, part of it is, one could argue that a part of its movie making has changed in the intervening time period, but it's something more naturalistic. But there's plenty of naturalistic acting that we saw in the 80s and the 50s and the 40s for that matter. So again, this is a very distinct style. And I don't know, and again, I'm sticking with Lynch more than I should. You're the more movie guy than I am. And
Hmm.
I realize I really have only I've seen Elephant Man and I saw it like at the time. So I don't
Yes.
really remember it. And I think maybe I've seen Blue Velvet. Maybe I saw it in that film class that I took. But otherwise, I'm aware of Twin Peaks, but I've never watched it. So I know, but I just don't know. I know the weirdness in this movie can be attributed to Lynch. I just don't know how much the melodrama and all that also ports over from other films. Or did you have a thought about that?
Well, okay, so we're inevitably talking about David Lynch.
I'm sorry.
So no, that's fine. That's fine. So I don't remember being having that sort of distance from what I was watching with the Elephant Man. I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
people behave naturally, which is what acting is supposed to be, that
Right.
it doesn't seem like acting. That yeah, I don't recall a moment saying like, "What the heck are these
Right.
people doing on this screen? This is odd," But this is the guy who started out with a racer head,
Mm-hmm.
which is nothing but weirdness.
Right.
And later in his career, he did movies that were intentionally surreal.
Mm-hmm.
And you would expect people in a dream, without giving any spoilers away, because I can't give any spoilers away. There is one of his movies, which I do kind of like, where it's a dream or some kind
Well,
of
but yeah.
imaginary
Right.
setting that's going on, whether this person had a head injury or I'm trying to obscure what the movie is here
No,
by
that's fine.
hemming and hawing about it. But you can't do that all the time and kind of still
No.
retain a narrative that keeps people going through the course of the movie along with the director and the actors.
Well, and to now go back to what you really want to talk about, which is the acting. I
Yeah.
will say, like for example, um, when the scene after Paul and Jessica have escaped from the Harkonnen bloodbath,
Hmm.
and they're in the desert, and they're having this sort of somewhat conflict about the Bene Gesserit teachings and Paul's, the prophecy business, and he laments his father's death, and he cries to the sky, "Father." It
Right.
just seems just melodramatic. It seems high school playish at best. It just didn't. I don't. It's supposed to be an emotionally resonant moment. In fact, I was looking for something else this morning, but I found that scene and watched it again on YouTube. And I was looking at the comments because, again, I'm cognizant that people like this movie, so they're gonna probably some people may
Hmm.
find our podcast annoying today, but like there's someone like, oh, that scene almost makes me cry. I'm like, how? I just don't get it. I don't get how this sort of really sort of flatly delivered melodramatic crying out for his father is supposed to be affecting. Or another great example is I was just from the beginning. Jose Ferrer looked like he was reading off of cue cards. Like,
Yes.
what is going on here? That just really almost no emotion, no reality to it. It was just stunningly bad in that regard. Um, I
Right.
didn't feel like, oh, who played the Duke? Oh,
Jürgen Prochnow.
yeah, I didn't. He just felt like he just memorized his lines and was redelivering them. I mean, the guy that played Stilgar. My note about when they first meet the Fremen and Stilgar and all that is like, is this Turkish Star Trek? Because that's what it felt like to me. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, YouTube,
Look it
Google it.
up. You really need to look up Turkish Star Trek if you've
That's
not
what it
seen it.
felt like to me.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I
Yes.
don't.
Well, it was jarring because you make an epic movie and sort
Mhm.
of the kind of the reflex I think that filmmakers have is to pull in who are the best actors you can get of that generation.
Right.
And so there are a lot of people in the modern adaptations who are very high name recognition sorts of actors. Here, you mentioned Jose Ferrar.
Hmm.
Jose Ferrar delivered one of the best film speeches I'll just say one of my favorite film speeches, which is where in Cyrano de Bergerac composes a poem while he's in a sword duel with
Right.
somebody. And, he's like in his head kind of working out all the rhyme and meter and so forth. Anyway, it's brilliant. And he is so good in that role throughout the whole movie. And he and a lot of other actors in this movie, you just kept thinking about the other better things that they were
Hmm.
in
Sure.
when they were allowed to act, in this non-fever dream sort of way that David Lynch imposed on them. And so I rewatched this morning the final knife fight between Fade and Paul.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And there are people in the scene who are, doing a decent job. Sting does a decent job, right?
He does.
He's fun to watch in this movie. He's not a great actor, but him kind of laughing and dancing around and so forth, that was good. But then you had all these other people kind of standing around stiffly, and like one of the Fremen, when Paul kills him and then uses the voice to shatter the floor underneath him for God knows why, and he says, "Oh, Usul does not need the weirding module anymore." It's like, boom, you're out of it, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
once
Right. Right. Right.
again, you're like, I'm watching this very stagey, almost kabuki-like movie.
Yes. No, and your point about Sting, I think, is interesting. He is at least fun to watch in this movie.
Right.
It's like maybe if the entire movie had been made the way Sting was playing it, it would
Yeah.
have been more fun at least.
Yes. Because like Kenneth McMillan, he's over the top. Who
Yeah.
plays Baron
Yes.
Harkonnen.
Yes. Yes.
He seems like the only one who's just like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm just gonna be a complete goofball, evil goofball on
Right.
the screen.
Like he's
Uh,
in a comedy almost,
Almost, yes,
except
yes,
for all the pulling out people's heart plugs
Yes.
and whatnot.
But but he's made into a comic figure. Was it intentional in
I don't
him
know.
flying around?
Oh, when
In
he
the
first
suit.
started flying, I'm like, I knew he flew because I'd seen scenes. I'm gonna spoil it. That's probably your merch. You want a flying Baron Harkonnen.
It's
Um,
not actually. I don't want my merch to have pustules.
oh, jeez, Louise. It's gross, but it's also comedically gross because you can tell it's fake,
Yes.
but it's also like, ugh.
He's having a great time having his pustules drained, and
Yes,
I don't know if you're going to be in what you realize is a bad movie, why not go for it? I mean, there are
right.
other actors' performances like that where you can just say, screw it, I'm going
Right.
to do my thing, my thing. So I thought was okay. I thought Francesca Annis, who played Lady Jessica, was kind of okay. Sean Phillips, I've always had a soft spot for ever since I, Claudius. But she's
Mhm.
also ruined by the way some of the scenes are handled by Lynch.
I'm gonna. Go ahead.
You can see her trying, like the Gom
Mm,
Jabbar scene,
sure,
just like
sure.
if you close your eyes and listen to her voice. She was actually the wife of Peter O'Toole. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Oh, okay. Anyway, and she played a fantastic Livia in I, Claudius. And there's one other I, Claudius actor in this movie, Patrick Stewart, who played
Hmm.
Sejanus. Anyway, enough of my BBC drama rabbit hole I just went down. But if you hear her voice, right, you can see this is a really good actor.
Right.
And you open your eyes and you think, oh, no.
Yeah.
Why are her teeth metal? I don't
The
understand.
costume design was a little odd. If I'm gonna like pick the actors that I thought again, Sting was fine for what he was. Although again, it was all very ridiculous in many ways.
Mhm.
The only actor actually that I thought fit Brad Dourif could have been a good Piter, but it was so
Yes.
bizarrely directed and his little juice limerick, and I don't know what's going on here. And the weird hand thing, it was like, but okay, fine. And it just didn't help it. For some reason, Mentats have giant eyebrows.
Yeah. Well, I wrote
Uh,
this down. So where is it? Put the pick in there, Pete, and turn it round real neat.
I
Why was that there?
don't know. Um, I thought that Max von Sydow actually was one of the few people that actually fit the character they were playing,
Yes.
ruined by voiceovers
Yeah.
and just generally bad dialogue. But otherwise, you know, I see. I didn't. Lady Jessica to me, and I don't know if it wasn't so much the actress, but it was the part was written. I'm going to arrange somewhat an adaptation for the moment, but it just that is not the character from the book, in
Yeah.
my
No.
opinion.
Oh, not at all.
And so I found her to be more a lady in distress in most of this movie. So I was turned off and didn't pay as much attention to her performance, perhaps. Um, I, I thought it was totally ridiculous when she manages to best still guard. Like, boy, you ruined that scene. That didn't make any sense, but okay, fine.
Right.
You know, yeah, like Brad Dourif stuck out to me. I've been mentioned him multiple times now. I mean, Kyle MacLachlan's a fine actor, but he just seems flat in this movie.
Well, and they would
And
have scenes, which I think there's a lot of speculation. What if this movie had been better had it been the longer cut,
mhm.
the 4 hour cut that David Lynch originally delivered. And I think there's a lot of conceit among Hollywood fans that if you let the director just do whatever cut that person wanted, it's automatically going to be a better
No, that's
movie.
true, and
It's
I agree.
because of their artistic vision. The
Right,
individual scenes in this are so bad,
right.
so often that extra padding isn't going to save it. So like
So,
there's all these scenes where and I forgot this until the rewatch, where there's like just a lot of like sly bro grins. You're like,
mhm.
hey, we're pretty awesome here. Like they're
Yeah, there is some of that.
like they're on the
Yes,
ornithopter,
right.
like when you first see a sandworm and so forth, it's like, hey dude, we're the Atreides, and we're out here in the desert, and we've got these big ass spice harvester machines.
So let's do Patrick Stewart, whom I love. I love Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
He feels like he's in. I don't. He doesn't belong in this movie. He doesn't. He shouldn't be Gurney Halleck. I'm sorry. I don't know really what he's doing.
I kept
He's
staring at his
trying.
hair.
He looked better with the longer hair actually later in the movie.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah,
But
I thought it was just a little distracting, though.
it was. It
Huh.
was. Um,
But it was okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think he was appropriately cast. I thought Dean Stockwell was okay as Dr. Huey.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, and the guy that played Thurfer Howard, Freddie Jones, he was okay, but again, the whole get up just kind of threw me for a loop.
But then there are people I wonder why they were even in this movie at all.
Hmm.
Like, why did they include Duncan, Idaho? You know, and
And he did not look like Duncan Idaho to me. I'm sorry. This is this
no,
fierce fighty guy. I don't see it.
yeah. So I mean, Richard Jordan was an okay actor. He was sort of
Yeah.
a mid-range actor, I would say. But he's like in a couple of scenes. They bring him
Mhm.
on. It's like, well, why didn't? So if you're going to cut something from this movie, why
Yeah.
not cut out this person altogether? There was this feeling throughout, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit,
Hmm.
and I'll reel myself back. But like that Lynch felt like there were things he had to pack into the movie,
Yes.
and then there were other things that just seemed like, why is this? Yeah, this isn't even part of Dune. So why did you stick this in? So,
No.
so let me
Yeah.
let me go on my rant about David Lynch.
Okay.
I think I've struggled with him as a director for decades. And I wasn't a big fan of Twin Peaks. I had friends who were big fans. It kind of just bounced off me. And it was because of this artificiality and this feeling like the director wants you to take you on a parade of grotesquerie.
Hmm.
Yeah, just things that are just weird for weird's sake.
Right.
Which is really, Eraserhead is that in the most distilled fashion imaginable. It is just one bizarre, surreal experience.
Hmm.
And you can think about it afterwards and try to understand and try to unpack what this movie really was. And that can be a fun thought experiment. And it can only really be fun once. I would
Right.
say. If you keep doing this, then it becomes tiresome. And I would compare him to another director who was popular in the 1980s, who also was very interested in grotesquerie, and that's Tim Burton. And
Okay.
sometimes it worked, and
Right.
sometimes I just always felt like, this again? Really? Yet again, we're going to have this? Is there no more range to you than
Hmm.
this? And there's the childlike aspect of it, just like, ooh, pustules, you know. Yeah. I, anyway, so that this epitomized to me why I often don't enjoy David Lynch movies. This is the
Right.
worst example. There are other movies I've liked a lot better, but always he always kind of needed to inject that into the movie in a way that, like, if you're telling an epic narrative like this and you want people to be swept along with these great great moments in galactic history with these oversized characters and big ideas and so forth, if you're constantly like reminded, like there's a little sniggering boy at the side of the screen to say, oh, pustules, it's it doesn't work. And maybe
Yeah. I
I'm being
mean,
too harsh, but
well, no. I mean, a couple thoughts to bounce off what you just said. I mean, I can appreciate surreal. I'm struggling right now to think about a good example of surreal that I would point to.
oh, I love surreal often.
Yeah, but it is
So like
not.
so like I'll give you an example. There's a crazy Japanese horror movie I've mentioned before, House. It's
Hmm.
completely surreal. I didn't look for House the sequel, right?
Hmm.
And Kwaidan is sort of this adaptation of Japanese ghost stories, and there's some an occasional surreal element to it. I think it was done with the right amount of restraint, so you still had a
Hmm.
movie that you could really at least feel emotionally engaged with. Here, I'd never felt emotionally engaged with anything.
Well, I guess what I was going to say is, in some ways, surreal almost glosses over this. It's just weird, right? Some of it's just plain weird,
Yeah,
right? Like, milk this cat animal that's also attached to a rat for your antidote. What the hell's that? That is, it's just
right.
weird, weird in a way that doesn't. It doesn't. I think what the problem is actually, for one thing, Dune is not a surrealist novel. It is a novel that has visions and dreams,
Hmm.
and a metaphysical sort of atmosphere at times. The spice induces hallucinations and visions, but it's not surrealist in its core. And I think that's the problem. The weirdness bumped me. It just bumps you out. It doesn't.
Hmm.
It doesn't like. I know a lot of the really weird stuff is all associated with the Harkonnens. So I guess he's trying to go for a particular kind of idea. Although again, things like the pugs, which I find hilarious. Like,
Yeah.
why in heaven's name with these dogs anyway? But
Well, it's like
right,
kind of like it's like Buckaroo Banzai, right?
yeah,
Like they were sitting around the set one day, probably a little effed up, on cocaine or something, and then they said, "Ah, ha, ha! Wouldn't it be funny if we had pugs,
yeah,
or
yeah,
or you had to milk a cat?" You know,
yeah.
that's the feel you get from it. Not that this was essential to the book, which is
Right.
fine if you want to
Or
annotate,
even to the aesthetic of
the
the
source
movie.
material. Yeah,
The
it just
movie
was kind of like.
it's just it's I don't know.
Well, so
But
there's
so
so that- I'll give you a counterexample from Lynch's own work, which there are moments of weirdness in Mulholland Drive,
mhm.
a movie I like way better than this, and there's a reason for it. And and Lynch does a kind of good job of injecting it in a way that like, oh, wait a minute, what just happened, and
Mhm.
the story sort of carries on from there. And yeah, here it's all the time, and there's no reason for it.
Mhm.
It's not intrinsic. As you said, this is not a surreal novel.
Mhm. Now, to the point about the director's cut, and I do not think that if Lynch had been able to, especially if it had been a 4 or however many hours the original cut was, I don't think I could have stood that. I can envision a different version of this movie. It's not necessarily radically better, but it's still, you take out the narrations, which were not apparently what Lynch wanted. That was imposed after the fact.
Hmm.
If you make it more an impressionistic film, maybe that improves it to some degree, or at least takes some of the absurd out of it. Although it doesn't take all the absurd out because some of the absurd is clearly on the screen from the beginning. But so maybe there's a better version in some, but I don't know that it's still a masterpiece. I think this is an interesting attempt in many ways. It is a difficult to film novel, but I mean things like the weirding machines or whatever they call them are just like, what the hell is going on here? And the
Right.
ending, which we haven't gone to yet, is deep. And anyway,
Well, we're not
yeah,
doing the
yeah, yeah.
movie
Go
as
ahead.
adaptation
That's
yet,
right.
so we'll get there.
My
We'll get
bad.
there. Uh,
It's still
okay.
weird, even as a movie thing, though. I mean, just forget the adaptation part.
Yes.
It was just weird. No pun intended.
Right. So
We're gonna
weirdness
yell
for
at
weirdness
things.
sake.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
again, the little kid off to the side of the screen saying
Right,
hee 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 hee. Uh, the production design, we kind of
right,
touched on this briefly,
right.
but is there a adjective or phrase that you would apply to the production design other
Yeah,
than weird? We can't say weird again.
Flash Gordon-esque.
Flash Gordon-esque. Yeah.
No, because really, and there is some common DNA here, not just the producer. I did find out that one of the women that worked on the models in both movies, there's a commonality there. But if you look at, I found that the sort of the costume design, the set design, and the model work reminded me of Flash Gordon, and it's sort of ornate in a way that seems fake. I don't know. It didn't.
Hmm.
I didn't find the aesthetic particularly pleasing. I don't know how much it's an '80s thing, but that's what comes to mind for me. What about what word do you have in mind?
So I would pick heavy metal, not in
Okay,
the general usage of that
right, right.
phrase,
That's
but
fair.
in this very specific magazine that used to
Hmm.
exist that brought uh, European comics to an American audience.
Which fits the Flash Gordon
Right.
analogy,
So
actually.
people like Mobius and Philippe
Hmm.
Drouet and others, that was the vehicle through which they were introduced to American comics fans. And this movie really felt like it leaped from the pages of an
Hmm.
issue of heavy metal.
I can
And
see that.
and before this, I was looking at some of that art from heavy metal. It's like, yeah, that really does have that
Well, I
look.
mean, Mobius did some of the, at least the concept art for the Jodorowsky version of this movie, so that would have been heavy metal stuff right there, right?
Right. Which would
How
also
much?
have been even probably more surreal version
Yeah.
had he gotten his
Oh
paws on
yeah.
it
Well, that
further.
might have been. It might have been. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, with a Pink Floyd soundtrack and
Yeah.
um,
Which I don't mind. I didn't mind that particular look so much. If you
no,
want to say I'm going to make it stylized,
right,
so the kind of the more modern adaptations that came out in the last few years have sort of like a very stark aesthetic to them,
right.
a monumental,
Yes.
almost kind of Soviet brutalist look to them.
Hmm.
That's fine. If that's the way you want to go, great. With also like weird, like sort of Frank Lloyd like right touches. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to those movies. How about the cinematography? What would you say is a good word for the cinematography?
This may insult people that like the movie. I thought it was kind of pedestrian.
It very, yeah, I agree. It wasn't very imaginative, and they made, choices to shoot things indoors. I
Hmm.
mean, there are a few scenes that were obviously done outdoors, but then they were, however, they managed the cinematography in this movie with back screen projection or whatever.
Hmm.
It just everything looked fake, right? Including outdoor scenes where you maybe want to have a little bit more of a realistic sense of things, like the scenes out in the desert.
Yeah.
Just
The
everything
only
just kind of looked fake.
the only scenes that I thought at least were visually appealing, which includes things that find their way onto, I feel like, posters and things. There's a scene with Paul in the foreground, and in the background on a dune, there are this sort of line of Fremen, and they're kind of in
Hmm.
silhouette. Those visuals I thought were good, although that one scene, because I think it's from the scene where Paul rides the sandworm. It does look like it's partially green screened because he's clearly not there with that background.
Hmm.
It just doesn't look like it's real. I mean, riding the sandworm was a ridiculous scene, quite honestly, and not very impressive. Now, I thought the sandworm model wasn't bad. That was one of the things that I thought was I kind of like the three-sided mouth on the sandworm. But
Hmm.
beyond that, pedestrian is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, and the special effects were janky.
Hmm.
And Carlo Ribaldi did the models, which you'd
Hmm.
think that would have been given, his background would have been better. But they just, I remember like when we saw the movie, I made a joke afterwards, like because Dino De Laurentiis had done a version of King Kong with, like a giant hand model
Right.
that kind of picked up the heroin and so forth. It's like, hey, I'm gonna build a big sandworm,
Right.
And you're right,
Yeah.
and they looked like puppets. They looked like
Yeah, they
puppets.
did. They did. It was all practical, so there's that, but
Right.
yeah, I don't
And
know.
and and it just to dump on Lynch's direction here. You saw them too much, like especially in the last battle scene.
Hmm.
They're just like he kept cutting back to them, sort of waving around, looking kind of like weird Muppets. And it's like I would have like even if they had been good models, not shown them quite so much.
Right.
Because you lose the awesomeness of the sandworms. You start to see like, oh, okay, that earlier shot, I kind of felt like that might have been a huge monster, but now it
Right.
looks like somebody with its hand up his
Right. Right.
nether regions. Um, the score. Why would you describe
So
the
you
score?
asked me to write down WTF moments from the beginning. The
Yes.
very first one I wrote down was when I saw in the credits that Toto did the score.
Yes. Cheers to that.
Um, but it's also kind of, I found it boring. I found the score
Yeah.
boring, and I found um, the the end title sequence. I almost made me laugh, and part of it was the score.
Yes.
It just, yeah, I didn't, and I like Toto, by the way, but no.
Yeah,
Again, it
again,
made
it
me
just
miss Queen,
yes,
which
like just
again,
people brought into this creative
yeah,
mess who didn't really fit. Like
right,
why Toto? Just like you can ask why Jose Ferrer.
exactly.
Okay. Did this movie end voiceovers in films?
Well, maybe it should have. It certainly just demonstrates the idea how internal monologue almost never works.
Yeah.
I have to admit to myself, I like this Duke. I'm like, oh, God, please don't.
Yeah, and when I saw it, I've kind of felt like, well, is Lynch just not confident enough in his own storytelling that he has to have these voiceovers? I didn't know it was the studio that
That's what
imposed it.
this morning, I actually seen it
Yeah,
twice now that was
yeah,
imposed after the fact. Now, but
yeah.
again, I don't know how much of, because some of it still had to have been in the original movie, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know how much of some of those little thought bubbles that they insert are, because the book does it, but it works in a book. It doesn't work on screen. You've got to find another way to do these things. But one thing that you have to blame on Lynch is the opening um, uh, straight to camera, Princess Irulan giving this expo dump. I mean, I
Right.
don't mind. There's a voiceover they use Chani in the new movie. It works just fine. So
Hmm.
I don't mind voiceovers per se, but holy cow! But especially the thought bubble kind. They just I don't. They're best reserved for sitcoms or something. I don't know. It just doesn't really do it for me.
I just was thinking of like an episode of The Simpsons where Homer says, "Did I say that or only think that?"
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and it was also like the audio editing was sort of it didn't make it as clear as it needed to be sometimes that this really was a thought bubble, right?
Yeah.
You start hearing the voice like, oh wait, no, he's thinking it. He's not saying that.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's get to now to Dune 1984 as an adaptation of
hmm
Dune the novel. What grade would you give this as an adaptation?
I mean, it's recognizable as the story, so I still have to give it a D, but I'm going to go D minus. Still not an F. It's not, although it goes off the rails in a couple of ways. But the basic structure of the story is there, although the weirding module thing is ridiculous. And then the ending, of course, is a substantial deviation. What would you give it?
I think a D. I might actually even be a little more generous to give a D plus because there were these times, as I said, that Lynch felt somehow compelled to
hmm
include things that if you had a hack
Oh,
movie down to 2 hours and 17 minutes, honestly didn't need to be there. But then there was
there,
all this other junk that like the weirding modules and the cat and that definitely did not need to be there.
no, I will say this. There is a weird, and I thought about it when I was watching it. There's a weird combination of occasional utter fidelity to the source material. Like
Yes.
some of the dialogue is just straight out of the book.
Right.
Or I made the reference about Kynes thinking, "Oh, I think I like this Duke" when they're in the ornithopter. I mean, that's
Hmm.
straight out of the book, straight out of the.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous in the context of the movie. Um, and there's other dialogue like that. But then again, you have these just total deviation, and also you cut out things that are kind of important. The fact that unless I'm forgetting something, they don't meet Stilgar till they're in the desert, right? So that we don't even know there's any connection. I guess we know that Duncan Idaho had met them or something, but it's all in dialogue.
Right.
So there's no setup for that. And it's just things just happen. They happen
Right.
to fit the story, but they don't happen necessarily in a way that makes narrative sense.
Yeah. On another tangent here, if you had a time machine and
hmm
you went back to let's say 1970 and
hmm
you said to Max von Sydow, you're going to be in two movies, Flash Gordon and Dune. You
Right.
are a incredibly respected actor right now because because of the Ingmar Bergman movies that you were in. Uh, be warned, this is in your future unless you deviate from
Well, he might
a
ask
path.
how many houses he was able to buy because he was in Flash Gordon, but I
So
don't
that's my
know.
question. Would he have been dissuaded by seeing his own
Uh,
performance in these terrible movies? And not that it was necessarily bad, right? But the movies
no,
themselves,
he was actually one of the better parts of Flash Gordon.
no, he's fun.
But yeah, yeah,
And he looks like he's enjoying himself at
yes,
times, unlike some of the other people in the movie.
indeed.
But yeah. Okay. So anyway, there was no possible way to come up with a resolution of that. I think he might have still taken the money.
Oh, sure.
The ghost of Max von Sydow, however, can come to me tonight and tell me that I'm wrong.
The ghost of Side Owl's past.
Yeah. So the ending is the opposite of the book.
Yes,
So it is the opposite because of both declaring this to be a glorious victory, like
right.
a typical Hollywood movie. Oh,
Hmm.
we fought the bad guys and we defeated them, and life is going to be great, not just here on Arrakis, but throughout the galaxy, which
Right.
is not the point of the Dune books
That's
at
correct.
all.
Right.
At
Right. Right.
all. I don't know why why that particular change. Maybe they didn't feel like they're going to be making any more movies. Maybe they felt like this just had this un, unmentionable monstrosity of a movie that that they had to like it a little minimally appealing to an audience.
Right.
Who the hell knows? But
It it felt like they didn't have any confidence, even though I think there was at one point a plan to make more movies. It just kind of felt like they were at least going to make a self-contained story just in case. That's kind of what it felt, which
right.
seemingly what used to be the case more in the 80s. Like these days, if you make a movie like this, like I know when they made Dune Part One, they had not been guaranteed with the second Dune, but it was made with the assumption they were going to make
Right.
more. And so typically, if I feel like these days, studios and directors and producers are looking to make, multi-movie epics and to exploit this IP as far as they can, for good or for ill. While in the 80s, it always felt like it was a gamble. Like we're going to make this movie and we'll see. And if it
Hmm.
does, then but then you run the risk of not being able to make the sequel. So then you kind of make it self-contained. It just felt like that was more common. Like a lot of
Yes.
superhero movies were like that. I felt like they were
Hmm.
made. We're gonna make one. We're gonna make one Batman. We're gonna make one Superman, and then maybe we'll make more if that does well. That's the way it felt back then, in a way that I don't think is true now. Maybe I'm projecting, but
Yeah. Are there scenes that they should have added that would have helped the movie?
well, like I said, the Stilgar scene, there's no Stilgar connection until they show up in Turkish Star Wars, Star Trek, excuse me. So that
Yeah,
would have helped.
I mean all the kind of the Fremen scenes are again these sort of bromance scenes.
Uh,
Hey, you're
yeah,
pretty awesome. I am awesome. Why don't you be our leader? Okay. I need
yeah.
a nickname. How about
It-
this?
that's yeah. Mm, I didn't really think about scenes to add, um, but the Stilgar thing is the one that stuck in my mind. What about you?
Well, I thought if there had been some scenes that would have more naturally done the exposition than having
Oh,
Virginia
yes.
Madsen stare at you,
Well, yeah.
which I watched the deleted scenes, which included just more
Yes.
dialogue for her in that opening exposition dump.
You're a better man than I. I could not bring myself to watch the deleted scenes. I thought I
They
just
didn't
can't.
really add anything.
Oh, well,
There was
that does
maybe
not surprise
one
me.
scene where Paul is saying something about the Kwisatz Haderach that was okay. It added a little more depth to that part about him rejecting his fate that's been written for him,
Mhm.
but the rest of it is just completely forgettable.
No, I mean, the things I prefer to be done differently. Like I said, the fight between Jessica and Stilgar is absolutely ridiculous in the movie. It's so pivotal in the book.
Yes,
And it just seemed like oh, we have to do this. So I'm going to grab him, and then he's going to give up, and that takes care of that.
right.
I guess the Jameis fight scene's not in this movie, correct?
No, not at all.
So that's kind of important.
Yes.
I think they filmed it, but it's not included. Apparently, it's in the TV cut, but it's not
Yeah.
in. I don't know. It's strange. Um, yeah, that's
Anything else that we haven't talked about that should have been cut?
so many things. The cat. Um,
The heart plug scene, we're pulling
the
it out of
heart
the
plug scene is
slave.
so gross and so odd.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, I think if I were making the film the way Lynch made it, I would have probably combined Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho into one character. There's just weird melodramatic scenes like when Jessica laments to Leto, "Oh, I will miss Kaladin so much." Okay,
Oh, I
thanks.
wrote that down as one of the worst delivered
Um,
lines in the movie.
yes, yes. Um, I would have cut all the worm lightning. I know that I think derives from something that's in the book, but it just doesn't
Mhm.
work in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the other problem with the rain, it was it killed all the worms. Just saying. Just saying. But that's a purist complaint I recognize from having read the book. But it's just, it's so dumb.
Yeah, yeah. They needed more. And something else is missing in this movie. There is no development of the Chani Paul relationship except for I guess the dreams somewhat, but then all of a sudden it's kissy time.
Yeah, it's just, hey, you're a hot babe, and I'm the white
God,
savior.
yeah. Well, but are you really the white savior when everyone on Arrakis is white?
I know.
It's a very, I mean, it really is
It's a
stunningly
very
white.
white movie.
It's entirely white. I think it's 100% white.
It's whiter than white.
The funny thing is, and poor Sean Young plays Chani, and I forget she's even there.
Yeah, yeah. Who makes a very distinct impression in another movie we just reviewed, Blade
Yes,
Runner.
yes,
And here she's just sort of
there.
wallpaper. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
she's wallpaper.
Yep.
Except to maybe like one time say, "Oh, Usul, don't go." Eh. Okay, we said it. We warned you, folks. We
Yeah.
said it. This is going to be a lot of therapy for us.
There is one scene um, toward the end when they're fighting, and Patrick Stewart is trying his best to work with the material, and all I could think of was there are four Pauls. That anyway.
Yeah, when they all climb on the worm,
Oh, it's so awful. I
it's
love the part where Kyle MacLachlan's kind of leaning back like he's being pulled by the worm, but there's just there's
right.
no dynamism to the scene. In fact, I just watched again. I'll make the comparison now. I'm sure I'll say it again next week. I watched the scene where Paul rides the sandworm in the new one. It's exciting. It is not this.
Yeah. So why? So based on what you saw in this movie, is there any reason to know why they accepted Paul as the leader,
No.
other than he had a very full head of hair?
Well, very, very. It was nice and feathered as things were back in the 80s.
Yes, but it just happens. It's
Yeah,
like the,
and
the romance just happens, and
exactly.
that is my biggest problem with Lynch here is, and this is again where I don't think more scenes would have helped.
Right.
Everything is disconnected.
That's
It
fair.
almost feels like there's not a narrative. Just things happen.
Right.
Oh, now you're the leader. Oh, now you're sleeping with Chani. Oh, now the emperor's coming. It's just everything is just incidental and disconnected from everything else.
Oh, and speaking of the emperor, and I kind of alluded to it at the beginning, but it's worth pointing out that while I understand in the novel the extreme power of the Space Guild, it's utterly bizarre in this movie that they basically order the emperor around the entire movie. I mean,
Right.
just in
Yeah.
a really
Shut
over,
up.
yeah,
Yeah.
with my let me get my 1930s radio microphone and I'm going to yell at you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though that would make a good looking podcasting microphone.
Yeah, there we go. There's your merch.
There it is. All right. So we're going to now talk about the wall of shame of movie adaptations of science fiction and fantasy
But
literature.
before we do that, well, I don't have to go my entire list, but you asked for the what the F moments.
Oh, okay. So what other what the F
Let's
moments?
I'm just gonna go on some of them. The one when you see the pugs in the Emperor's ballroom, like what's going on with that?
Yes.
Uh, Mouse juice box. What is that? Was crazy.
The cow.
Yeah, the
The
cow.
cow. Just
Um,
totally random.
yeah. Uh,
Go
And again,
on.
Gurney had
Do
the pug.
proceed.
There is the part where he's just repeating the tooth, the tooth, the tooth. I'm like, all right. Yeah, the cow, that was on my list. Um, of course, Sting emerging from the steam bath is an indelible image from this movie, but it's just bizarre.
Well,
The cat,
supposedly he wanted to do that buck naked.
I'm sure he
And then
did.
they gave him the metal underwear.
I already talked about the cat rat box. It's so strange. There is. I saw this in your notes too, but there was one of the guild guys in the background with like a tube in his mouth. Like, what's going on with that?
Yes, I put that down as why does this guild guy have a kazoo?
That's right. The fact that Aaliyah sounds like a combination of Blaylock from Star Trek and Gollum was something else.
Hmm.
We hope you relish the Tranya. Anyway, it's just.
Well, it's obviously like dubbed over,
Yeah, oh
but
yeah, totally.
yeah, over Alicia Witt
There,
was the actress.
there's that whole the Emperor's like weapon merry-go-round that he gets on. Like,
Yes.
one, why is the Emperor doing this? And two, why is it some weird carousel? Um,
Yeah, and all the Emperor's generals looked like they came from a dive bar. Like it's like he grabbed
yes,
them and said, "Hey, I need somebody to go on this carousel of death.
yeah, there
Would
was
you join
one
me?"
dude. I can't remember. There was one dude in the background, on the throne on the podium, who he just looked like he looked real Lynchian. How about that?
Yes.
Um, where did the drums come from? The Fremen had in the throne room after Paul
Thank you.
kills.
I had that exact question when I was watching that scene again. It's like all of a sudden there are guys with drums.
And they're like,
Kinda,
they're not even small drums. It's like a whole like a kit hanging around their necks. It's just
we
so
didn't even see
strange.
them walk in the room. They're just there.
But yeah,
Like,
that whole
like if they had announced themselves, like they came in and there was some sort of ceremonial music
yeah,
that announced the Fremen as they came into
right.
the
That's right.
throne room or whatever that
Yeah,
place was.
they're just there.
They're just there.
They're just there. And I'm not quite sure this is quite a WTF moment, but it was like when they're doing the weirding training, the weirding sonic thing, and one of them says "Muad'Dib," and he thinks to
Yeah.
himself, "My name is Death" or something like that. Like, okay, all right, fine. Anyway, I'm sorry. You want to move on about
No. I'm glad we
adaptation.
covered that. I was going to do that later, but I'm glad we
Yeah,
got that out of the way.
I didn't want to
Uh,
forget. But
because there are so
Rat
many
Juice Box.
WTF
Well,
moments.
Mouse Juice Box will always be. That
Oh,
could be
another thought I
a
just
band.
saw in my notes about the cinematography. The improved quality of the visuals, the 4K, does
Hmm.
not help this movie.
No.
Yeah, that they don't help. Okay, so Wall of Shame. So there have been some other bad adaptations
Hmm.
of science fiction and fantasy fiction. Um, where would you put this movie in terms of shame, shamefulness, awfulness, above and below the following movies? So
So is above more shame or less shame?
above is more shame.
You can just put it at the top of all of them. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. The three-part Hobbit movies.
I would rather watch the three-part Hobbit movie any day of the week.
Okay.
What about you? What's your thought about that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
it's a
it's
painful.
bloated.
It's
It's
bloated. It's
bloated.
painful, but it's not as bad as this.
Oh no, not even close.
Okay, how about the Brando version of the Island of Dr. Moreau? Have you seen that?
So I've not seen the other ones on your list. So you're going to have to fly solo here for a second as I
Oh,
try to
okay.
think about whether
So
I've got something else I
so
could put on
Dune's
the
above
list.
that one. Well, we can just like turn all the cards over and tell the
Yeah,
studio audience that it's worse
yeah,
than all of them.
yeah. That was what I was getting at. I can't think. I mean, I can't think of an adaptation that's worse than this. But I mean, it's this combination. Again, it's a weird thing. It fall except for the very substantial deviation at the end and leaving out some key scenes. It tries to be
Hmm.
faithful to the story. It's
Right.
just so poorly executed, I think.
Well, so this episode is like an hour plus Primal Scream. What is it about a bad adaptation of a book that you love that is so distressing?
It's just disappointing, right? I mean, you're looking forward to seeing this thing that you imagine in your mind. You wanted to see it brought to life. There's a certain thrill about it being done right. And I think it's just gravely disappointing when it doesn't work out the way. It's not just deviates in the way you thought about it. In some
Hmm.
ways, it's fun if it's different than the way you thought about it. But when it just doesn't hit, it's very disappointing. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm more or less said it earlier when I described my disappointment when we first saw the movie, which was this is going to make it harder for me to share this with other people.
Sure.
This is going to reinforce their sense that geeky kinds of forms of art like this are just inherently stupid and childish and nonsensical and just something at the time, that was seen as fringy for a reason.
No, I totally agree. I totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. But still, it still upsets me. I mean, but even now that we have a better film version of the books, I wouldn't say perfect to preface what we're
No,
going to
nothing's
talk
perfect,
about
but
later, but way better.
oh yeah.
And even like the Sci-Fi Channel series was better than this. It still bothers me just how bad an adaptation this is, aside from just how bad a movie it is.
I mean, so I know like I Robot theoretically is an adaptation, but they really don't adapt Asimov's story. So maybe that makes it worse. I don't know. But I'm just like looking
Yeah,
at a list. There's just like I didn't think the Hitchhiker's Guide movie was a great adaptation, but it was fine. Um, I mean, Blade Runner deviates from the novel quite a bit, but it does so in a way that is more than acceptable to me,
oh,
as we talked
brilliant! I
about.
think. Yeah,
Planet of the Apes is also not identical to the book, but I think does a good job. But I can't think of anything that would be worse than this. As I try to find other examples, but I can't find
yeah.
any.
Flash Gordon. I'd rather watch Flash Gordon than this. Weirdly,
Oh, 100, no,
although it's
yeah.
close, it's close
It's
for
close,
me.
but I mean, I thought about it because I saw the questions ahead of time. So actually, unlike sometimes I see a question and I forget to think about it, I did think about this. Um, Flash Gordon, at least at its core, is absurd. I mean, it's a comic slash, you know, early movie serial. It's a certain kind of adaptation. There are things about it that actually work for me, even if
Hmm.
as a whole, it's again, as we talked about in the podcast, several weeks ago now, it is it's a weird combination of the absurd and super serious in a way that doesn't quite work, but I'd rather watch it than this. I really would.
Yes. I'd rather watch it than another. I'd rather watch another movie that we reviewed recently, Buckaroo Banzai, which
Yeah,
we
I
didn't
have much.
consider to be a success, but at least you have John Lithgow and others going nuts on the screen.
What, yeah, and again, in that case, I mean, I think I have more affection for that film than you do. I still, although on the rewatch, didn't hold up in the way my memory held up, but it's fun to me
Yes.
still.
Hmm.
And some of the absurdity is at least, I think, more. How about this? I think that kind of like what I was getting at earlier, I never quite understood what the point of the weird was in Dune, really. Except again to maybe make the Harkonnens just seem more evil, but it made them more buffoonish to me than evil.
Yes.
Buckaroo Banzai is knowingly weird and trying to be amusing and entertaining and funny by being weird. Maybe it doesn't always fulfill that target, and maybe the story doesn't always make as much sense as we might like it to. It's
Hmm.
just it's at least aware of what it's doing in a way that fits the tone of the film,
Right.
and of the story, and I don't think that's true here.
Well, it was saying, isn't there something inherently ridiculous about pulp heroes or
Yeah,
superheroes?
sure.
That's fine. As you said, I don't like the movie as much as you did, but I, I also felt like Lynch was a little condescending to the material in this movie,
Yeah, I
by
could see that.
throwing in all these kind of dark comedy elements into it,
Hmm.
which, okay, maybe you're not the guy for this, for being in the director's chair for this
Hmm.
adaptation.
Hmm.
Who would have been better? If you go back to the 1980s, I have a couple of suggestions here.
Yeah,
So Ridley Scott was originally
he was
discussed
attached to
as,
the
as
project for a while apparently, and then kind of
right, yeah, and
abandoned
his
it.
brother died, and he decided to make Blade Runner instead. Would he have made a better Dune?
Yes, I think he would have.
Okay.
I think
Anyway,
that because of his, I think he has a much. I think this movie, this story
mhm.
requires a certain aesthetic. Maybe not a specific one, but it needs to produce a particular aesthetic in the film adaptation of the story. It's like Jodorowsky might have been able to pull it off in the surreal way. It's like
Right.
this one has again this weird combination of sort of relatively straightforward 80s practical effects and the weird, bizarre Harkonnen stuff, and then some other weird things just tossed in for no good reason. I think that Scott is a much more visual director. I mean, and we saw that in Blade Runner.
Hmm.
In fact, I remember, I don't think I said it in the podcast. I'll say it now. I was reading an interview with him that he said that people accuse me of making things too pretty, but it's a visual medium. It should look good. I mean, Alien looks good. Blade Runner looks good. His movies look amazing
Right.
typically. And I think and I think that Villeneuve, again, the preview, I think does that in his adaptation. That just doesn't play out here.
Hmm.
It's kind of striking to, I can get to this back to cinematography. It's striking to me, and maybe it's part of your point about so much of being inside. You have, and again, this appeals to me. The desert, while not my preferred um, artistic palette, but the desert is amazing and can be beautiful. And a movie about a desert planet should be on some level beautiful, and this
Right.
movie is not. There are a couple of very passing scenes of sand dunes that they take that are kind of intriguing, that are visually appealing, but they're very limited. Dune should be a tactile experience because of the
Right.
sand and the dunes and the rock, and it should be visually stunning. And we don't get any of that really in this movie, in my opinion, except maybe fleeting scenes. I think really Scott could have done that in a way that
Yes.
Lynch didn't.
Yes. And it didn't have to be a copy of Lawrence of Arabia, but I
No,
think
no.
I think you're dead on about just making Dune seem like a beautiful place that was
Yes,
worth defending.
that's right.
That's a core part of the
Well, the book's
of
about,
all.
as
Yeah.
as you pointed out last week. I mean, it's about ecology. It's about environment, and you don't. I mean, even Star Wars, to pick another desert planet example, there's scenes in Star Wars that are quite striking on Tatooine that you don't get anything like that in this film.
Nothing. Yeah, everything seems fake.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like James Cameron, could he have done a good job of this? I'm not sure about that one. I think I would feel more confident about Ridley Scott than James Cameron, circa
Yeah,
1984.
I agree. I mean, yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, Cameron has skills, maybe, um, but I don't know about then. I don't know. I would prefer, I think, to Lynch's vision. I think Cameron has a certain sci-fi aesthetic that Lynch clearly didn't have.
Yeah, and the only other person I could think of just off the top of my head was John Milius, uh, who did the Conan movie.
Uh, which I've never seen, so I can't. I don't think I have a frame of reference.
Well, once again, you're dead to me.
I know. Maybe Duncan Idaho would have been all oiled up and muscular if he'd done the movie.
I think that I think what Milius did well is he liked the source material.
Hmm.
Yeah, and again, I really question whether David
Hmm.
Lynch had any affection for what he was shooting, because it feels like a movie done by somebody who was again sniggering at it and at the source material. And that's not to say you can't make a good movie if you don't like the source material.
Right.
And I've mentioned this before, but there is a noir movie, Kiss Me Deadly,
Hmm.
that the director Robert Aldrich hated the Mike Hammer stories.
Right.
This was his job to put one on screen, and he made kind of surprisingly fun movie as a
Hmm.
result. And it's not that it's like heavy-handed parody or anything like that. It's just it has its own kind of weird vibe to it. It works way better than this does. All right. A lot of people, as we mentioned, kind of blame the studio for
Right.
imposing the voiceovers, cutting the uh, everything down. Dino De Laurentiis is not known for being a great filmmaker, even by building a giant-sized King Kong animatronic that did not make that movie good. I really doubt that he was the villain in all of this. What made this
Right.
film a debacle. I But anyway, I just want to mention it because it so often comes up. People will say, "Oh, you can really see where this movie could have been better if only Dino De Laurentiis hadn't gotten in the way."
Well, I'm gonna say this much. There is so much, at least to me, there was so much about this movie that reminded me of Flash Gordon that
Yes.
I think I'm gonna give more blame to Dino De Laurentiis than you're going to, which is
Okay.
totally fair. I'm not saying that Lynch unhinged further would have been an improvement, but the things that at least the visuals of the pedestrian cinematography that we've mentioned, the model work, the practical effects, a lot of the set design stuff, I just think comes straight out of whatever crew came over or was associated with De Laurentiis' work, because it just looks so much like Flash Gordon to me. Maybe that's a recency thing, but it just really feels that way to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know that. And this is weird because I think at the time it was a fairly expensive movie and I think a fairly effects heavy movie, but it almost feels like it's made for television. But maybe that's just, again, that may be
Hmm.
2025 me looking at a 1984 movie. But again, as I've talked about before, I mean, well, I'll say this. I mean, Alien was 5 years prior to this film. It doesn't look
Right.
like it was made for television.
Nope.
Blade Runner was about the same time, right? Was it also 84, 86? Right, is right around here.
Yeah, that's right. Close enough that it was a
It doesn't
fantastic
look,
looking movie.
yeah. Even Star Wars uh,
All the
looks
Star Wars movies look
so
great.
much better. I mean, so
Yeah. Even
there
I would
is,
say, to go back to James Cameron, even a little movie like The Terminator
right. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
didn't have such jarringly bad special effects or weird acting or whatever that again ripped you out of the movie and say,
I
"What
mean,
the hell am I watching?"
I haven't seen it in a long time, but 2001, it doesn't,
Oh my God, that's
it's,
fantastic. Yeah.
so I don't,
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even as I keep bringing it up for some reason, because it's on my mind. I mean, even like TOS on TV relative to the budget and the time, in some ways, looks better to me. I know that the effects are not, but it just, I don't know. That may be a stretch, but I don't know. It just doesn't impress me, this film. I know it does impress some people, and that's totally cool. But it just doesn't work for me.
So I would gird my loins if it were at all possible and watch the original 4 hour version of this. And it would settle in my mind a lot of the issues
Right.
that we're talking about because all I know right now is maybe Dino De Laurentiis and the studio made this movie worse by
Hmm.
forcing Lynch to cut it down to
Right.
2 hours and 17 minutes.
Right.
My question is how much worse?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
and Lynch made very deliberate choices about what to
yes.
keep in,
Yes.
which I find highly questionable.
I mean, I think the odds are it may be better in some capacity, but I think the melodramatic acting, again, I blame on Lynch. I can't blame that on anybody else.
Yes.
I mean, it's so ubiquitous that it cannot be an actor's choice that's going on here. It's a
Mm-mm.
directorial choice. The whole weirding module thing, because it's key to the whole story. The whole reason, supposedly from the beginning, that the Emperor is having House Harkonnen wipe out the Atreides is because they developed this new technology based on sound. It's in the very beginning.
Right.
It's in some of the expo
Hmm.
dump at the beginning of the movie. It may be the direct to camera stuff from the Princess. So it becomes this weird, super important part of the movie that's dumb. It looks dumb. It also undercuts the whole weirding way, which is really the way that Fremen are talking about the Bene Gesserit. It's a kind of a
Right.
key part of the book.
Hmm.
And you turn
Yeah.
into this really lame with the thing around Paul's neck and the looks
Yes.
like a camera from the 1930s in your hand as you yell words and blow things
Well,
up.
as you just yell the equivalent of "Hiya!"
Yeah. Yeah.
"Hi,
Yeah.
karate!"
Jim Cotta.
There we go.
There, that's what it is.
Jim Cotta.
Jim Cotta. Anyway.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think I may have the therapy may have worked.
Okay, yes. So merch, our signature question at the end. Did you have anything from this movie, even though you hadn't seen it?
Nope.
I had nothing. However, I did look up whether there were action figures, which I kind of remember there had been.
Right.
Given my disdain for the movie, I would not have bought any of them. But yes, there were. And currently on eBay, you can get a full set of them in the packaging for $1,400.
No, I read that someplace. That's crazy. Yeah.
$1,400.
Oh, and I think you read it in your notes. That's where I read it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane.
Yes.
No. I mean, what kind of merch do I want? I want someone who'll buy this Blu-ray off of me that I spent money on.
There we go.
Yeah. The only. I mean, if I'm would be pressed if there was some kind of maybe little statue of the sandworm model from the movie, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
Like bursting out of the sand with an. Oops! I hit my mic trying to hit the microphone. Bursting out of the sand with its mouth open, but nah. Beyond that, no.
And then waving itself around.
Well, yeah,
way too long.
Well, then the alternative would be, so when I worked, when I was in college, we were both in Irvine. I worked for a patent law firm in Irvine. And one of the clients was this toy maker out of Japan, and they made these. People may remember these things. They were like plastic flowers with faces, and they would dance.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
So you could have a sandworm that did that. It kind of stuck out of the sand and danced to the music. Be fantastic.
Hey, Paul, will you be my friend?
Exactly. Will you be the Al Gaib? Yeah, sure.
I think you need to absolutely have a dancing figure of the Reverend Mother too.
Oh, of course.
To go along with that.
I've got the gom jabbar. Yeah, that's great.
Good luck, little human. Okay, I was hard pressed to come up with something I wish I had and this is not something I would put out on display.
Right.
But, I was trying to think of something that had that heavy metal aesthetic to it.
Oh, yes.
So I think like the Guild Navigator in the tank.
Yeah.
Complete with orifice. We did not talk about the orifice.
Yeah, no, not the orifice and the
the multi-purpose orifice of the Guild Navigator.
Yeah. Space cloaca.
Yes.
I did write down at one point, and I skipped it when I did my WTF moments, but there was when they fold space, they're like, I wrote down there burping and farting their way through space.
They are.
It's so strange.
It's just sort of like this weird shaped slug. It's floating around.
Yes.
In a shower of sparkly material, and it's just
so
daffy. But again, like don't show anything. Just have the ship appear because space folded. We don't need to see the navigators.
Herbert was smart to say in the book, you can't see these people.
Right.
You're just going to be in the ship, Paul. You can't see the navigators.
Yeah.
They're rumored to be mutants, but we really don't know.
Right. But yet another incident of showing something that was better left off screen.
Although I guess I will say again that if we could get one of those 1930s radio microphones to podcast with, that wouldn't be bad.
But then we'd have to podcast standing up all the time, which would make it more attractive for us to keep them shorter than we do. Because our ancient knees would be giving out by the time that we wrapped up.
Don't give the listeners any ideas.
Okay. But again, listeners, if you love this movie, I would love to hear.
We apologize if we've been too mean, but yeah,
that's right. Yeah. All right. Well, next time we're going to talk about the Denis Villeneuve adaptations. So join us then, and thanks for listening.
The Dune-A-Palooza continues.
These cats aren't going to milk themselves, so we'd best be going. Thanks again for listening. Please like and subscribe and leave a review on the podcast app of your choice. We always appreciate the feedback, and if you want to give it to us directly, send us an email at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. Also, visit us at our Substack, someancientgeek.substack.com. And you can also find us on Reddit, Facebook, and Blue Sky. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.
More deep. Your soul no longer needs the weirding module.